Hi everyone, welcome to Monique's Home, and today we're going to talk about the 2 strategies of teaching your children how to read. So different people, different strategies, but today we're going to talk about 2 of the more known ways of teaching children how to read. And there's been a lot of debate as to which one is better than the other, but hopefully at the end of this video, we would have sort of come to a conclusion as to what we can do and what has been more effective when teaching children how to read. So the first way that we teach children how to read is what we call phonetic reading, so teaching them the phonics. This strategy is often described as bottom up because we're starting from the little components, the small parts that make up a word, and those are your letter sounds. So with phonetic reading, we're teaching the children letter sounds in isolation and then putting them together or blending these sounds to form words. But this is devoid of meaning and really getting them to concentrate on knowing the letter sound correspondence, that A corresponds to A, that N corresponds to N, and that putting it together, N, An, makes the word An. The second strategy is what we call whole reading, and it's often described as a top to bottom approach because we're working on the word itself without really knowing, or later on, if it's necessary, understanding the letter sounds that make up that word. And it's attached to meaning, and we understand the meaning of the word, or we're able to guess the word or read the word because of its context. So for example, you have a flashcard with a picture of an apple. So it's not necessarily that you know the sound of A is A, then P is P, and you're able to sound it out and string it together to form the word apple or to read the word apple. But because you see the picture, you're able to associate that with the word, and you can read the word as apple because you can see what it means. You know what the picture of an apple is, and you're able to associate that with the word. So some people would solely use phonetic reading. Other people would use whole reading on its own. What I do with my children, and what has been found by research to be more effective, is called a balanced approach. So really taking from phonetic reading and also from whole reading and putting it together. And what this approach really does is take strengths from both the phonetic reading approach and also the whole reading approach. Because for example, you solely practice phonetic reading and your child is able to read magnificently because your child can sound out the letters and blend them together to read a word. But what happens when your child is faced with a word that can't be sounded out? So for example, your child sees the word Y in a story, in a passage, and your child tries to sound it out to be able to read it. So your child would do wah ye and then tries to put it together. But how do you put together wah ye? You can't. On the other hand, if you're doing the whole reading approach and your child is used to reading words that he's seen in picture cards and materials you've used before, and even if your child is able to understand the context of a paragraph, what if he's faced with a word that's really alien to him, something he's never seen, and it's really hard to pull out from a context? For example, the name of a place like Mississippi. So this is when a balanced approach comes in handy, because we're able to address the weaknesses of both approaches and really allowing our children to be able to break down words into letter sounds so that when they're faced with new words, they can try and read it on their own. And we also want to take from the strengths of the whole reading approach in that we make reading meaningful for our children. So it's not all about them breaking down letter sounds and just mechanically knowing that letter sounds blended together make up a word, but really allowing them to understand that words have meaning and the things around them can be labeled with these words. There are many ways to practice the whole reading approach. A lot of these I discussed in the pre-reading skills video that's also on this channel, but really they don't need to be complicated. They're things that you do with your child every day, and that's what's really important, is really incorporating it into your routines and the things that you do on a daily basis. So one simple way of doing this, of putting together your phonetic and your whole reading strategies, is when you're reading books. So when you're reading books, your child is able to see the pictures and understand the meaning of the story by those pictures. So what you do is point out the text or the words that's on the same page so that your child is able to connect those words to the picture, to what's happening in the story. A step further would be to point out a specific letter and sound it out, invite your child to sound it out, and then read the word and then connect it to the picture. Another very simple way, and something that happens every day in your daily routines, is to name the things that you give your child. For example, you're handing your child a fork. As you hand your child the fork, you say, this is a fork. It begins with the letter F. It's a fork. Therefore, you are talking about letter sounds, but not devoid of meaning. So it's not in isolation. You're practicing letter sounds, but in a context that is very meaningful to your child. Now, if you're already practicing letter sounds with your child and really having sort of a more structured way of going about it, instead of teaching them letter sounds in isolation, always couple it with pictures. So you present, for example, the letter C, and you say the letter C has a sound k, 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 k. But don't stop there. Always add pictures and give your child examples of things that begin with the letter C, begin with a k sound, and go a step further and really take things from their environment, actual objects that your child sees around the house that begins with the letter C or the k sound. Another very simple way in practicing the whole reading approach is to label things around the house. So when you label things such as their chair, their bed, their towel, their toothbrush, the mirror, the door, then it's very easy for you to sound out letters to them, but also attach it to meaningful things around them. So you've already set up your environment. It's not something that you need to prepare for, but it's always there, constantly inviting you and your child to explore letters and to explore the meaning behind those words. At the end of the day, just remember that reading need not be stressful. It doesn't have to be structured. It doesn't have to be formal, and to always keep it light and to always incorporate it in your daily routines and something that your child finds meaning in and finds fun in. So I hope this video has been of some help to you. I hope you learned a little bit about reading strategies, and there are things that you might want to try, and if you do try them, you can always connect with me on Instagram or here in the comments below if you have any questions or if you just want to share stories about you doing reading strategies with your child. Please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Monique's Home. I will see you next time. Till then, remember to make every day your own version of extraordinary.